The theory of change is often referenced in readings in just a single paragraph. What I want to do is to give you a deeper understanding about the concept that gets called theory of change, how you come up with a theory, and why it's important to have a theory of change as you begin to design your strategies to make a difference. So Aspen Institute has done a lot of thinking and work on theory of change planning. In the work that they've done looking at how do you improve communities. So you can find more out about this if you really are interested by going to theoryofchange.org or Googling Aspen Institute Theory of Change. Basically what they say is that a community change focused process and work to help change a community has to be embedded in the specific situation that you expect to change, and in being able to describe how you expect that change will look and what success looks like when you finish. So it's a 6-step process that I'm going to talk through, and each one of these tasks identified here I'll explain in a few minutes. So first is that you identify the long-term outcome of the goals. And then you begin to develop a path of change based on your understanding of the community. I'm not going to read the rest of this list because you can read it, and we'll be talking about it throughout this presentation. So the first task is to identify what your long-term outcome is, or what the goals are for your work. Take some time to write down what you think should happen if you're successful with your work. What will change? How will that community change? Maybe you're focused on a family or a block or a small neighborhood. Maybe you're focused on a population of people with like characteristics. So the definition of community here is pretty broad, but what change? What's the outcome? What do you think will be the result of the efforts you're undertaking? Oftentimes you'll find yourself identifying interrelated goals. For example, you may identify that you want to see the children in the neighborhood attend school more regularly, and you want to see the parents be able to work while the children are in school. Those are interrelated goals. And so be careful about, at this stage, be careful to separate those into different outcomes, because there'll be a different kind of pathway to success for each one of those. One working with the children in the schools they engage with, and the other, for example, working with their parents and maybe employers they might engage with. So again, make sure that you're working with one outcome at a time as you do this. So the first deep part of the theory of change work is to find out what is going on in the community. Why is it that children are going to school enough? What is it that needs to be addressed in order for them to be able to go to school? These preconditions or barriers, these are things that need to be fixed in order for the real success. Children are in school every day in order for that to happen. But you need to understand what's keeping them from going to school, and that's the precondition identification. So it really is a simple map. You start with your long-term outcomes, but you quickly begin to realize that there are preconditions that need to be addressed. So one precondition for someone not going to school is that their mother doesn't wake them up in the morning, and so they are late to catch the bus. Another precondition may be that because the mother was working, the older child needed to stay home and take care of the children that were under age 5. Even precondition 1, the child got up late, might have a specific other precondition. Actually, their mother went to work before the child needed to wake up. So you need to pay attention to what are the various levels of causes as we go. So understanding these barriers comes out of the work you're doing to get a deeper understanding about the issue that leads that you want to change with your target outcome. So what is the issue? The issue may have preconditions like we talked about. They may also have barriers. So a barrier for a child going to school may be that the bus that they take requires the child to be at the bus stop and to wait for a long period of time because the bus is not a predictable bus. That has nothing to do with the child. In fact, it has a whole lot to do with the system itself. So that becomes a barrier. An obstacle may be that they didn't have winter clothes and it was winter, and so the child didn't want to go to school without having warm clothing. All completely different kinds of things that need to be paid attention to with different strategies. So what you want to do now is to look at what the underlying causes are for those obstacles. One obstacle, like I said, being the child didn't wake up. So what is the underlying cause of that? Another obstacle is the bus is never on time. What are the underlying causes of the bus not being there on time? And focusing on these underlying causes is where your theory of change begins to form. You need to change the underlying cause to overcome the obstacle that will then get you to your target outcome. So here's a sample map for you to pay attention to. So let's just say that the long-term outcome was a growth in home ownership in a neighborhood. Lots of rationale for why home ownership was a good thing for this community, but it hasn't been happening. Some of the preconditions that begun to be explored were that the people who could own homes, people who live in that neighborhood, didn't have very good credit rating. They didn't have stable jobs, or the houses that they were in the neighborhood were too high priced for them to buy. Three very different kinds of preconditions that needed to be attended to. Those preconditions had underlying causes. It's very different to have a credit rating problem because you just got out of the university and you have only had temporary and part-time jobs, versus a poor credit rating because you've had bad loans, you haven't paid your loans off in the past. Two completely different kinds of underlying causes. So this would say we need a much more study of what the people are in that neighborhood or the people we're wanting to try and reach so that they can become homeowners. It could, if you, again, I'm just going to talk through the second one. If there's no, people that you're trying to get to become homeowners don't have stable jobs, they don't have a job history, which keeps them from being able to get a bank loan. It could be that the reason there's no job stability is a major employer left the community and a lot of people got laid off. That's very different than somebody who doesn't have job stability because they're new entries in the workforce. People in this community tend to be younger and they don't have the history that you need to be able to get a mortgage. So again, very different kinds of underlying causes that need to be attended to. So the study and theory of change has to press you and those that you're working with to make a decision. Are we going to focus on those who are just out of the university, who don't have seniority? Those are two very strong underlying causes that you could work on. And you're going to begin to choose what strategy, what barriers you're going to focus your attention on that will help get to the path you want of home ownership. So the next level of this work is to research the barrier, gather evidence and real information about what's going on in the specific community that you're focused on. What are the facts that you can gather that help you understand what's happening in that community? And then how do they sort themselves out? Are they preconditions? Do they point to underlying causes that you need to pay attention to? And use those then to begin to choose where you can have the biggest effect. So now let's dig deeper into theory of change work. A couple reminders. Theory of change is the best tool when you're able to collect data about the situation, collect data about those preconditions you were looking for, and continue to use evidence and research that will help you be able to choose the right strategies. So I'm going to talk through a lot of the details about how you can do this and end with the best strategy that works for you to have the long-term outcome you're desiring.